look at all the things that Trudeau was talking about, at least in the twilight period of his tenure as prime minister, is Canada going to be a different country when it comes to immigration?
There's a lot of misinformation out there in the public space about immigration to Canada. Many of us, especially Nigerians, who came to Canada, came in under the policy that was designed by conservatives. It's called yes. Immigration in Canada right now is not an ideological thing. It's an economic policy. There is nothing liberal or conservative about it. Immigration will always be there. The issue is, how lenient will it be? How many people will they be bringing in? But then you, as an immigrant, and you're wanting to come to Canada, you want to come to a Canada where there's opportunity for you to grow. I don't think it is fair to immigrants that you leave your job as a medical doctor to come to Canada to drive a cab, or you leave your job as a regional bank manager to come to Canada to work in Walmart.
You spoke and Trudeau listened. We spoke on this podcast and Trudeau listened.
They will talk, they will listen, and they will act.
Are you happy now?
Am I happy that Justin Trudeau resigned?
Yes.
No. I'm not happy that he resigned. I'm not happy because his resignation is, to me, fake. I wanted him to stay on the seat so he can be beaten properly in an election.
Were you surprised when you heard the breaking news or you saw it on TV that Trudeau had resigned?
I wasn't surprised. I saw it from there's been predictions about it that he was going to resign. I won't lie to you, the pressure was getting so much. First thing first, that if you could feel is the economy isn't doing so well. And when the economy isn't doing so well, there's no need to hide. Everybody feels it, everybody knows it. He didn't stand a chance in the next election. If Trudeau was going into the next election, I think that would have been a walk in the park for the conservative guy.
Because people are just angry with the liberals. They don't seem to understand that we're suffering.
Let me just know what's been in your mind concerning this tariff war with your neighbors.
I don't think Canada takes this tariff thing seriously. The economic prosperity of Canada is under threat. 97% of the crude oil Canada produces goes to the US. Canada produces crude, sells it to the US, and then imports crude from Saudi Arabia. It doesn't make sense.
I was reading the comments and someone, when we had the previous videos or the previous episodes, one of the many comments, I don't remember exactly how the person put it, but the person was rude, first and foremost, and the person came and said, that why are we talking about these things? Why are we talking about what's going on in Canada and everything? That we don't know. That's how the Canadian government can decide to change policies or that would affect immigrants negatively when they see the kind of way we speak and everything. And as soon as Justin Trudeau resigned, I said, wow, Emeka, you did this. You spoke truth to power. Justin watched the episodes and he said, wow, these people are making sense. I think I'll go ahead and just resign. And you spoke and Trudeau listened. We spoke on this podcast and Trudeau listened. So what would you say to people who will tell you now that, or ask you, are you happy now?
Am I happy that Justin Trudeau resigned?
Yes.
No. I'm not happy that he resigned. I'm not happy because his resignation is, to me, fake. It's just a performance. Justin Trudeau is an actor who thinks that he's on a stage, like action, lights, and ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. That's what I think. Most politicians are that way. Let's not single Justin Trudeau out. I tell people this statement, I make this statement that politicians do not exist to solve problems. If politicians really want to solve problems, The problems that we have as humans are not impossible to fix with all the power that a government or a politician has. The thing is, if politicians solve problems, they will become useless. We won't need them anymore. So they cannot outlive their usefulness by solving our problems. Now, for the person who said, oh, yada, yada, I find those kind of comments funny. I welcome them. They are very funny. These people who say these things do not understand how government policy works. The government does not go through social media looking for people's comments to make its policy. The government, every politician has his or her ideology, okay? And me, in one obscure part of YouTube, will not have any significant impact on. I mean, how many people listen to that episode? It has maybe 5,000 views. That's not how government collects information. When the government really wants to collect information, they throw out a survey, as many people that answer it and bring it back to them. That's what forms government opinion. But as for Justin Trudeau resigning, I don't think he resigned because he knew what was coming. If he didn't, he would have lost a vote of no confidence, a vote of confidence, because the party that has been propping him up in the heat of the moment said that they wouldn't prop him up anymore. So his next best option was to prorogue parliament and then step down, because a lot of people in his caucus were leaving. There's even before that, a lot were saying that they will not run for re-election because people are just angry with the liberals. They don't seem to understand that we're suffering. They don't seem to understand that we don't hate you for being you. We're just saying that your policies are not getting us to where we want to be. So am I happy that he resigned? No, I wanted him to stay on the seat so he can be beaten properly in an election, and there will be no excuses. But he found a way to wriggle out of it. So here we are.
Is this too little, too late for his party, for the liberals? So even if they throw up another person to run in October, can they change things? Can they steer the ship in a different direction that would be appealing to the majority of Canadians?
Sure. You give a politician 24 hours, they can move mountains if they want to. Human nature is constant. I mean, today, a poll was released. The person who is almost certain to replace Justin Trudeau is said to be preferred by Canadians to negotiate with Trump on the tariffs. If Justin Trudeau had an election a few weeks ago, it would have been a disastrous defeat for them. In fact, his resignation came at a point where if an election was called, the Liberal Party may have ceased to exist as a party because they wouldn't gain enough seats to be recognized officially as a party. So it was a very calculated move.
When you now look at this and you look at all the things that Trudeau was talking about, at least in the twilight period of his tenure as prime minister, is Canada going to be a different country when it comes to immigration now? Will they now take a very hard stance? So is it a case of, well, Canada is moving in a different direction regardless of the party that wins in October, whether it's the Conservatives or the Liberals? That's gotten to that point where no more open doors, fewer immigrants.
There's a lot of misinformation out there in the public space about immigration to Canada. It will interest you to know that many of us, especially Nigerians, who came to Canada, came in under the policy that was designed by conservatives. It's called it's called the express entry. It was a conservative government that designed that policy. Trudeau came, made it better, made it efficient, made it in such a way that it was a faster process. Canada, immigration in Canada right now is not, it's not an ideological thing. It's an economic policy. There is nothing liberal or conservative about it. People, whoever is in charge as prime minister will use immigration to whatever, to do what suits them. Immigration will always be there. The issue is, how lenient will it be? How many people will they be bringing in? But then you, as an immigrant who is sitting somewhere, wherever it is you are, and you're wanting to come to Canada, you want to come to a Canada where there's opportunity for you to grow. I don't think it is fair to immigrants that you leave your job as a medical doctor to come to Canada to drive a cab, or you leave your job as a regional bank manager to come to Canada to work in Walmart, or you leave your job, whatever it is you found to do wherever you are, you leave it. It was good enough to bring you to Canada, but when you come here, you are told you don't have the Canadian work experience. The reason this is happening is because those jobs, high-paying jobs, which you want to get into, they don't really exist anymore because of certain policies that the government has made. There's COVID, that economically Canada is struggling. There's a $60 billion deficit. The national debt has almost tripled or doubled. You know, we borrowed so much during COVID, 300 or 400 billion dollars. We didn't build any infrastructure with this money, to the best of my knowledge. We just, used it to solve problems, like give people CERB, which is a form of UBI, buy certain things, shore up the economy.
Sorry to cut in,
Yeah.
but how much of this was attributed to immigration, or is it just bad fiscal policy? Is immigration for this
we let in too many people that our infrastructure can handle. If you're like the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, which is the institution tasked with finding how much housing we're building, they're saying that we need to build 3 million homes by 2027 or so. Now, the population of Canada has grown by 3 million in the last couple of years. You cannot bring in that amount of people when you're just building houses in the hundreds of thousands. It just doesn't make sense. Now, what you've done is you've created an artificial demand for housing, because a lot of people now are chasing housing. So house prices are going up, rent is going up. So immigration is something that should have been managed. When Stephen Harper was prime minister, what he did with immigration was that if you look at the numbers that he brought in, it would be at par with economic performance. When the economy was well, he brought in more people. When the economy dipped, he lessened the amount of people. But the present dispensation just opened the doors and brought in people. In fact, it became so crazy that there's a statistics out there that said that IRCC was taking 10 seconds per the amount of application they've approved. If you do the math for the amount of applications that they approved per a particular time, it was 10 seconds spent on an application. That's not enough. There is no way you can do a thorough job in 10 seconds, but that's what we have. So I think immigration, even Justin Trudeau himself has acknowledged that they mismanaged the immigration numbers. The funny thing is that 2 years ago, when they were being told, 3-4 years ago, when they were being told that immigration is starting to burst at the seams, they called the people who said that all kinds of names. But now that the problem is there for everyone to see, they're admitting that they've overdone it and they are scaling back. Actually,
people who came in who came in 2024, the new immigrants from Nigeria, from elsewhere in Africa, it's like they're having the short end of the stick. They are not. But it seems that they they're not having it like the people who came earlier. It is more difficult for people coming in recent times now than earlier. That's what Emeka has just uh, explained. And before you came, we are talking about Trudeau's resignation. Were you surprised when you heard the breaking news or you saw it on TV that Trudeau had resigned? How
I wasn't surprised. I saw it coming.
you didn't think he was going to stay there till October and just continue? The pressure was so much.
Sincerely, I don't know how the media, especially should I say social media, or how those guys get to know what's going on. There had been a couple of activities that had happened of late before Trudeau resigned. For example, the Minister of Finance, who is the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, when she resigned, some days before it happened, there was also predictions that, look, Trudeau is going to sack Freeland, but Freeland is going to resign before it happened. So when Trudeau's own happened, I wasn't surprised because there's been predictions about it that he was going to resign. I won't lie to you, the pressure was getting so much. First thing first, that if you could feel is the economy isn't doing so well. And when the economy isn't doing so well, there's no need to hide. Everybody feels it, everybody knows it. Cost of things, how I put it, inflation, and everybody feels it. So that pressure again, plus a number of a lot of revelations, a lot of things about the party. Their ratings at that point in time was doing very, very, very poor. So he didn't stand a chance in the next election. If Trudeau was going into the next election, I think that would have been a walk in the park for the conservative guy. He would the way he would sweep. At least right now, not to lie to you, he has some form of formidable opposition in the new guy, the McCartney, because if you want to look at him from the point of view in terms of his credential, he has a brilliant CV. But one thing that works against him, or working against him, is he's kind of throwing the same line with Trudeau. Some of the rhetorics and some of the things that right now he's not reading the room. That's what I'll say. Anybody who is handling his campaign or they are getting it totally wrong. They are not reading the room. The world right now is tired of a lot of, should I say, forced ideologies that people are trying to bring, that they are being forced on them. For example, I'm not saying climate change is not real, but it's like they're using the excuse of climate change to choke people so much. EV mandates, carbon tax, and everything, trying to discourage you from how I put it, from conventional form of energy to move to the so-called green energy. And which, number one, you guys don't have the requisite infrastructure to support the green energy. So you guys are trying to discourage people from the conventional energy. You're putting taxes and everything. And people all over the world, if you read it, the last American election, if it's a pointer to you, because one thing about history is that shows is that the American election and American policies are always a pointer to where Canada also going, because when it happens in America, the next place that always happen that will probably replicate itself is in Canada, because people are looking at it that, look, you're stifling your economy. Canada is a resource-based economy. For example, Alberta oil and gas. The Alberta oil and gas industry is currently being stifled by the Liberals because of all the green energy policies they are pushing, and there's very, very good opportunities for them to expand, for the economy to expand through some of these resources, drilling of resources and everything, to make more money. But these things are being stifled. So these are part of the things that affected Trudeau. Usually, Canadians are people who usually do not talk about immigration. They are people who, I'm not saying they never had an opinion, but they are people who never voiced out about it, because, what doesn't affect you doesn't affect you. But now, you have stifled people to the extent that people are now talking about it. Something that was never a subject of discussion has now become a major topic of discussion. And so all put together has affected his ratings, and he was coming.
I can sense the frustration in your voices, you both, and I believe in the voices of everyone, black, white, green, blue, if anybody is blue skinned or anything, immigrant, non-immigrant, native, anything. I can sense the frustration. What I'm hearing and what I've been hearing over the last couple of weeks is that Canada is in an economic it has an economic crisis. And it is just the reality. There's so many things wrong with Canada. Now, this takes me to what could go, what could even go worse at this point where Canada is having this economic down. It's for Canada to now start or be thrown into a tariff war with what's supposed to be one of their biggest allies, the North American tariff war, particularly the Canadian American tariff war. Most of the US's crude oil is from Canada. In fact, $400 billion of imports came in 2024 from Canada to the US, and 4 million barrels of crude oil is imported every single day from Canada to the US. We understand what crude oil is because we are from Nigeria. Crude oil is our mainstay. So when Trump decides to put a 25% tariff on Canada and Trudeau retaliates with another 25% tariff on 1,256 US items, at the end of the day, tariffs are suffered or affected negatively by the consumers, the people, because everything, the price of the commodities will go up. So the price and the inflation that we're all complaining and talking about and all these issues will just become worse. We're still in the 30-day pause period, waiting for what will happen if they don't come to the table and agree by March 1st or March 4th. Now, with this trade or this tariff wars, what's your take? Emeka, let me start with you. What is your take on this tariff wars, and how bad could this just be for Canada generally, for immigration, for living conditions, for everything? But it's just, let me just know what's been in your mind concerning this tariff war with your neighbors down south.
Okay. I don't think Canada takes this tariff thing seriously. On the 1st of February, these tariffs would have come. Somehow, we managed to get a 30-day reprieve. And here you are. There's a bunch of things that you, the Prime Minister, said will happen. And instead of putting these things in place, you're going to France. Now, it could be something that is already scheduled. The economic prosperity of Canada is under threat. So 97% of the crude oil Canada produces goes to the US. It would shock you that the western part of Canada is where most of this crude is made. There is no pipeline to ship this crude from the western part of Canada to the eastern part of Canada or Atlantic Canada, such that we import crude oil from Saudi Arabia. Yes, Canada produces crude, sells it to the US, and then imports crude from Saudi Arabia. Does this look like? It looks like Nigeria, that is the 6th largest exporter of crude, has 4 refineries, but imports refined crude oil. So it doesn't make sense. Now, forget about Trump and his tariffs. Trump is trying to do what he thinks is best for America within the time that he has. That's fine. For me, the way I like to solve problems is whenever I have a problem, and this is even in my personal life, in my professional life, I go into the proverbial mirror, I look at it, and I try to address first what I see. Because once my internal system is working properly, then the ones external are nothing. There is something called interprovincial barriers to trade in Canada. It would shock you to learn that it is cheaper to import wine from France than it is to buy from another province in Canada. Does this make sense to anybody? There's like a whole bunch of things that because Canada is a true federalism where you have the federating units having autonomy to do whatever they want, run their provinces however they want it. But to an extent, we've done this so well, it has become an impediment. Now, I think this is what America has looked at now and said, perhaps we can exploit this situation. There's a project, a pipeline project that is called the Energy East Project, which would ship the crude oil made in Western Canada to the Atlantic provinces, and from there, it can get to other markets. It can get to Asia, it can get to Europe. The problem is that the places where this pipeline will pass are saying, we need to protect the environment. We're not going to let this pipeline go through. One of the quote-unquote problem provinces is Quebec, which unfortunately or fortunately receives the most amount from the sale of crude oil. But they don't want the pipelines to pass. One of the conditions they gave is, well, if we have to let this pipeline pass, you have to keep the control room in our province. You're not the one that owns the oil. You're not the one selling it, but you want the control room to be built in your province. Now, does this sound like a country that wants to do free market trade? The tariffs, yeah, it is what it is. Some people, there's a divided school of thought. Should Canada retaliate or should Canada use diplomacy? By diplomacy, they mean, do we go and beg? Well, we can retaliate, and that's fine. My position is, for how long can you retaliate? You are a less than $3 trillion economy. The US is nearly 30 trillion, like 10 times the size of your economy. While your tariffs against the US will make the US citizens suffer, likewise, the problem is, how long can you hold out this war? If I have 200,000 bullets to fight a war and you have 20,000, your bullets will finish before mine, and I still have loads to shoot. Regardless of this tariff, what are we doing internally as Canadians? Are we setting ourselves up to reduce our reliance on US? It's a nearly 400 million population country. It makes sense that as at 41 million, we would rely on them. But also, doesn't make sense economically to put all your eggs in one basket, because most people hate Trump. They see him as a bully. They see him as this and this and this and that. But are we learning the lesson that he's trying to shift our gaze to? The lesson is, you cannot continue to rely on the USA for your economic prosperity. That is just economic suicide. So Canada needs to come together and say, okay, how do we pivot from this and start selling things to other countries? This land has a lot of resources. So here's the shocker. With the war in Ukraine, Russian gas was cut off from getting to Europe. The Prime Minister of Japan came to Canada to say, I hear you guys have liquefied natural gas. Could we do a deal and you sell to us? Germany came. Greece came. What did our Prime Minister say? There is no business case. We can't sell that to you. It will damage the environment. He was saying this at the same time that in BC, Canada is building one of the world's largest LNG plants. So how does it make sense that you're building this on one hand and you're saying on the other hand there's no business? So Trump, in his 51st state, joke, serious, whatever it is, I don't agree with Canada being a 51st state, but I like that Trump is being ambitious. That's what Canadian politicians need to become, ambitious. It will not happen. Canada will not become the 51st state. But that train has left the station and nobody knows where it will go. We cannot just sit and continue to say, oh, this will never happen. The Prime Minister was asked, what is the identity of Canadians? His response, we're not Americans. Nobody's asked you what we are not. We're asking you what we are, and you're telling us what we are not. So we don't even know what our identity is. All we know for sure is that we're not Americans. We're not Americans, but we depend on America for defense. If America pulls its military might, Canada will be taken over by either Russia or China or Japan. That's pure and simple. It might be difficult, but it will happen. But because we're close to America, America sees Canada as, a place that it has to protect, because if it doesn't, it could become a risk to it because of closeness. So all of these things happening, let's overlook the tariffs. If it comes, fine, we'll deal with it. If it doesn't come, fine, we'll deal with it. As events unfold, we'll see who is right at the end of the day. But all said and done, Canada needs to, look inward. Our problem is internal. Trump is just a catalyst. Trump is just railroading us to an expected end. If we don't pivot now, it will be painful. If we don't do it now, it's our children that will suffer from it. Hopefully, they have the balls to do it.
Deep words. Before I need to get your own take on this tariff thing. But before I get to you, you said something that just hit something in me. Trump, we all agree, is a disruptor. Trump has come to show you that, see, the so-called reliance that many other countries will have reliance on the US for trade, for support, for everything. I think other countries, not just Canada, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's their allies or anything, they should start to rethink that the US may not be as predictable as they used to be. They may not be
benevolent.
Yeah. So, Busi, please, let's hear your own thoughts. What are your own thoughts on this North American tariff war? Because at the end of the day, if they don't find a resolution in a few days, everybody, the gas you are paying for, you pay more. You think you are buying in your grocery shopping, you spend more, despite the fact that you're complaining about things being expensive. You spend more because everybody and producers will transfer the tariff cost to the consumer.